want you to actually kind of use the time that we would deck today, and then we'll see what kind of time we have next week for any more types of projects in Django. I would like to kind of move the class forward. So I think that maybe on Monday we'll have one last Django session, and then we'll move on to another database system, which is called MongoDB, which I think you'll find actually quite exciting. The reason I'm saying this is because I don't want you to think that this is the only focus in our class. One more thing I'd like to talk about is if you go to the class website and you go to databases and you go to the planning your time, hopefully you can all see where I am now. You'll see that the schedule is right here, and so we're going to be going into this kind of stuff here. I'm also thinking about, I haven't put the exam up yet, but I'm also thinking about putting up a second exam sometime soon, maybe during, what are we now? We're the 23rd of October. So we are right in week 8. And so I'm thinking about having the exam maybe in week 10 sometime, like maybe during this lab time here. And so I'm not exactly sure when a good time would be just yet, but I haven't added it here, but when I do add it, I'll let you know. As you know, we always have to have exams in this class. I can't control that. So I'm thinking that in 2 weeks we'll see our exam, and it's going to be very, very similar to the exam that we had before, where it'll be kind of a take-home exam. But it'll be very similar to the exam that you've already had. Prizes there, but you'll hear more about this as we get closer to that to week 10. Okay, so let me get back to the slides here. One thing that we were doing is I think that we were, I'm just kind of moving forward here. Don't forget that you have all this information in these slides you can use to start up your app. Today we're going to just drive this app home and then take some time to play with it. And I think that'll be enough. I think where we left off was we were doing this Python super user. And so let me just go to my own project. And by the way, if you pull over your repository, I believe that I left behind. I left a working copy of my site, the one that I was working on here in class, for you to look at. So, for instance, if you're getting stuck in some of your code, you can always look at the files that I left for you, and then you can see more or less how we configure them in class, and perhaps that'll help you files. So I'm going to go to my terminal and come with me to my terminal. Hello, welcome back. And remember where I put everything here? I put everything into my root directory, Django, Django project. And then I have this, anyway. So I have these files here. So now I need to activate my repository or my environment, and I do that, remember, by typing in source. And then I have to go into my site, and then I have this directory here called bin, or is it script? What is it? Not this, not my site. Sorry, it's my and then bin, and then I have activate, and then I type that in. I can see that I'm actually inside my environment. So you always want to make sure that you have that. Now, let me just ask or answer one question that I received yesterday, and that is that if I'm inside my environment, which I have already established, and I've already installed Django, do I need to type in this pip install Django each time? Do I need to install that? No, you do not need to install that every time. Every time you go inside every time if you've created an environment, you've already installed Django, then you do not need to go back in and install and reinstall pip. And the reason why I'm saying this is because while you could, you can do that if you want, and every now and then it's a good idea because maybe the libraries or whatever it may be. That's it's not necessary. I guess you could update the libraries, but otherwise, the libraries probably you may not want to update your libraries because your code, remember, will work with the version that you've already put together, and so maybe it's not essential to update those libraries. So I'm going to go into my sites, and remember, you have this manage file here. I can just type in /manage on Linux, and that works just fine. I can type in run server, and when I do that, my server comes up. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So come with me now to the slides. I feel like I'm just like pulling you to the slides. You can't actually control where you're going on these. But when I go ahead and run this thing here, you can see that I get this error message. Don't worry about this. We're going to ignore that. This is really kind of outside of the scope of everything. But if you type in a slash, you type in, for instance, music, then you get your music app homepage. This is like your HTML, your index HTML file. But more importantly, though, if I type in admin right here, then I get to my admin page, which is actually what we were establishing before when we were doing, what was that? Here. When we put together this command right here, this create super user, this is actually this is where you use that super user. So now what I wanted to do was just to take you through and kind of give you an idea about what you can see inside this, what you can see inside this administration. So go ahead and type in, for instance, in my case, I'll just type in my admin and my password here. My password. I'm going to go ahead and just put this in here. And of course, I didn't put the right password in here. It doesn't work. Maybe it didn't work. Okay, there we go. So there we are. So now we're inside this. We're inside our administration. Now the nice thing about, the really nice thing about this Django code is that in the old days, and I say the old days, if you wanted to, if you're running a web server, chances are you probably had to build much of the code yourself, including this site administration page. Now, the site administration page allows you to get inside your site and kind of look around and see what the settings are, what the users are, what their axes levels are. But also, you can look and you can click on things like groups. You can see, for instance, like how you can create groups in your website, which is actually kind of interesting here, where you can like look at different types of. Groups would be, in our case, our database material, like groups of data. You can click on the users, and you can see, for instance, who the users are. Now, let me just take a moment here and just kind of take you through some of some of the code that you have actually inside this admin. And for instance, you have a search you can use here, which is actually quite extraordinary. You can do search. Of course, there's only one name here, but you can click on different buttons here, and you can see some of your users coming up according to different staff statuses. Then you can have, for instance, by super user status. Remember what a super user is? I'll just take you through that. A super user is not some kind of superhero. Well, they could be, I guess. But in this case, though, a super user is the person who really has the ultimate control over the whole website, which means they can change seemingly any file that they want. So that's why they call them a super user. And so you can now add other people to your website and make them super users too, and so that they can also go in and change some of these sites, or some of the content, or some of the pages, or the code, or whatever it may be. And so you can organize their name according to this piece of this rubric down here. And then also you can organize people's names by maybe their activity level, like what are they doing? Are they what have you tasked them to do? Can you see what they're doing right now? So for instance, you can designate different tasks in Django and have different people working on those tasks, and that would be like something you might be able to see them working on this when you click on by the active ratio. You can see whether they're logged in and doing that task. But what I really like, though, is this search right here. Now, of course, we only have one name in here. So if I just type in like admin into a search, of course, that name is going to pop up because that's the only name there. But what I'm trying to say, though, is that in the old days, like maybe, I don't know, before Django, maybe 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, if you wanted any of this functionality, you had to code this yourself, which, although it doesn't seem all that exciting, just one page of some things we can click on, this coding may have taken you some time. And you probably had to actually spend some time to kind of figure out how the code's going to work before you can actually do this. And then, anyway, now here it is. So it's actually very nice, and it's a very easy way of organizing our system. Now, when we look at, that's the users. So the groups, what we're going to do in groups, I'm up here, that's our work today. So a group is going to be where we're going to store the database places where we will store information about the music that we are going to be adding. So that's what we are today. So we're going to be looking at how to install like albums, band names, and a logo into this database here so that you can see it. Oops. Right here. So that's the super user. So that super user gives us this ability to do all that stuff. But we're not going to actually need to use the super user's capability in admin. We're going to do this using code, and I think you'll find this is actually quite. So, oh yes, this is interesting here. One more thing that I think I'll just take you through and just show you. I think I've shown you this before. I just wanted to show you something about what the database is showing. Let me go ahead and get the database running for you. So this is DB browser again. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm going to load up my database Django is using. And if you look inside auth user, you see all this browse data. Auth user, there we go. This is what I wanted to show you. And that you have, like, for instance, all this information that's kind of all stored in there. Every time you add a user to your admin here, their name will appear here. So let me just close this and try that and see whether we can get this to. Over here. So how do I do this here? Maybe I can go and type add user. I can click on this add user at the top here. I'll put my new username. I'll call Jane Myth. I put the last name in there. Called Jane. Jane. And I'll put her email in here. Password confirmation here. Again, this is all stuff that you can automatically written for you. I'm going to save and continue editing. I guess I don't have to worry about it. Please correct. Oh, the password is too small. Goodness gracious. That should. Okay, so what is this? That is too common. Goodness gracious. Man, I guess I'm just not very good at. I'm not good at editing these. I'm just gonna. I'll put a real password in here. I'll give you. And then I'm gonna save this and continue editing. Okay, there we go. So now Jane was successfully added. Oh, sorry guys. I wish switch automatically. There we go. So this is what I was doing. I just added this name here to Jane in my administration. Just clicked on the add user. Where was it? I clicked on here into users. I clicked on this button up here on the top. Can you see that perhaps? I clicked on add user, and I just typed in this new name here called Jane. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay, so anyway, getting back to my database, so then I can switch over to the database here. When I go back and load my database, I want to show you that the new name actually has shown up in this authorization group here. So if I click, oops, user auth, there we are. So for instance, here we are. This new name, Jane, which I just entered, is right here. So this is actually quite a smart database because I mean, I didn't have to worry about establishing anything. I just kind of came in here and set this thing up and started running this. But the database was already there, and it's like now it's already keeping track of the date that people have joined, active, whether the user is active, their staff or not, whether they are a super user, all of these things here. But the most interesting thing, though, is the password. This place right down here, this is your password, which is stored as an encrypted string, which is actually pretty clever. Django handles all that for me. I'm going to go ahead and close this and get back to my, let me just close this. Let's go back to where we were. We are here, and so now I'm going to go and I think that I'm going to actually get back to my slides here, and I think that we can start adding some data. These, by the way, these are the links you'd use if you're getting into your either the music site or the admin site. It's all right there. But now what we're going to do is we're going to add a music app to our database. Now, if you notice, let me just take you back to here. When you click on groups, there is nothing underneath here. It's all empty. So when we add a database, you'll see this name showing up down here. So how do we actually go about doing that? Well, we have to go ahead and add the music app. That means we have to tell the system here that the database has been installed. And I think that we may have done this. Let me go back and check with my editor. Won't see it just yet. I'll go ahead and just put my edit up here. I have to just run these things. Now I'm going to go ahead and establish a folder, a project folder, and that would be my Django project. Go ahead and click here, and oops, stuff. Maybe I'll stuff. I'll just close this so I don't back to my. In a second. There we go. My folder, hopefully coming up. There, got it. Now, when I go to my site and I go to music, and there's this file here called models. We put this file together last time. Now, I wanted to take some time here to just kind of reiterate some of this stuff. So this is the beginnings of your schema for your database. So your music database. So you can see that we have a table here that's going to be called album. You have to kind of like read this slightly differently. But the table is going to be called album, and in Python language, they call that a class. Next up, inside your album table, you're going to have an artist attribute. And in Python language, artist is actually string, or it's like we're creating this like string here. It's an object, but it's this is how Python puts it together. And so this information here says that artist is my first attribute. It is going to be made up of basically a varchar with a maximum length of 250. Now, that maximum length of 250 is designed so that you're not using up all of your resources. I mean, the idea is that when you first load up your database, whether or not you use up the space artist, whether you're taking up 1 character or 150 characters, you have 150 characters to spend. And so you don't want to have this thing just colossal. You don't want like a huge amount of space allocated to artists because you may not use it all. And so they just imagined that 250 would be a good size. Now, one thing I will say about the artist, though, or about names, is that you really must consider perhaps the nationality of some of the language that you'll be, or some of the names or the words or the language that you'll be using to fill up your attributes. Because if this were names and I was adding names of people from another country, it's very likely that people's names in other countries are going to be much, much longer than the names in this country. And so you might consider adding more space to this area here to be able to hold those names. I met somebody, and they were from Eastern Europe, and their name, I think, had about 20 characters. Their last name had 20 characters. And so, for instance, many of the databases that we've been putting together so far, where we're holding on to last names, we only gave them about 10 characters. Well, 10 is not going to be sufficient. So be mindful of that. Think about how much space you're going to need. The next attribute we have is this album title, which is going to be another varchar, about 500. That's because you might have a long title. It might be some kind of a rec or a haiku type of name. Who knows? I mean, you may have a long name. And so you might need more space. The genre, that's like the kind of music. You might have pop, rock and roll, rap, classic, classical. It's all those kinds of things here. So that's your genre. And then we're going to have this logo, which is actually going to be, I gave so much space here because it's actually going to be a link to another place online where we can pick up an image. It's a link to an image. Now that's our first table. The next table that we have, if you can see this, is this table here called song. And song has album, file type, song title, and some other things. Now this would be file. So the point of this thing is that you might want a database here where people can log in and they can listen to your music. If you're an up and coming artist, they can listen to your music. Now you can offer them some free music that they can download using this this table right here. And so that's why you'd want to have like file type. You might have the information, or maybe you'll be streaming it. I don't know. Maybe you'll just stream the music to them. But you might need some place where you can hold on to that music. This table is probably incomplete. Doesn't really do much. It's just another table that we'll use for the demonstration of this app. But you might use another table to actually hold the music that you'd use to stream. Note. Okay, so that's been done. So I'm going to go back now to my slides. Go. And whoops, I keep switching the wrong thing here. So we have this code. By the way, this code this working code is in your class docs. So you can find that file and then you can use it. And if you're having trouble getting your models.py file to work, you can look at the file over here and make sure that all the spacings are good to go. Maybe there's something, another problem. But you can compare your file with this file. So watch out for proper indenting. That was one of the big things that we had last time. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have, oh yeah, so we also in this file here, we have some other code that we've seen before. For instance, this models foreign key albums on delete models cascade. This is new code that we haven't seen before, but it's all added for us. What this thing does is this cascade thing means that as you're adding more and more albums to your table, your album table, then it adds another foreign key. And the cascade means it just says the previous foreign key was 1. Now when I add something else in there, I'll say that the foreign key for this new thing is 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. And so the foreign key management is actually it's automatically handled for us. This isn't specifically a Django thing. This is an SQL thing. But you can actually set up your tables so that foreign keys are actually incremented automatically for you. Of course, there's other problems that you may come across. Like, for instance, if you want to make sure that before you can add a file here, you have to make sure that, or before you can add some data here, you have to make sure that the data is added someplace else. Maybe you'll have some trouble with using this type of code there. But I think in general, though, this does add a lot of convenience because you can just go ahead and it just handles your foreign key numbers for you. And so this on delete business over here, that means that when you remove albums from that table, that means that it again updates those foreign keys so that if you remove if you have album 1, 2, and 3, and then you remove album 2, then that means that the foreign keys shift around so that everyone is updated. So it's actually quite cool. Okay, so another thing I think we have to do is we have to go to this file here in settings.py. We may have already done this, don't remember. And I'm going to go make sure that actually this file is updated with this information here. So let's go back. We'll go back to the editor. Hopefully you can see me here. I'm going to find this file. Are we? We're here, settings. Okay. Settings, and I'm looking for this thing here called installed apps, which I've already done that. That's all taken down. Now, the reason why I'm going through this twice, I know we went through this before on Wednesday, but I'm going through this twice because in my own experience, when I went through my first Django project, I actually forgot many of these steps here. I know that sounds really, really foolish, but I forgot to tell the database or tell the website that the database was actually there, or to actually link my music app to the database. I forgot to do all these things. And so I spent hours and hours poring over this code, trying to figure out what was wrong. And by poring, I spent time actually going over this code here and not looking at this settings file. And so the reason why I'm going over this twice is so that you do not make the same mistakes that I made. I think that one person making these mistakes is bad enough. You all know now that there's like a bunch of other pieces of code that you have to update that are not so obvious. I think we've already run these things over here. Let me just go ahead and run them. I don't remember where we were. We have this migrations, and really what migrations is going to do, this first one is going to go through the models file that we created. Where goes to the models file, and then it's going to create. It's going to create the schema, and then the next one is actually going to integrate. So I'll just go ahead and paste that in there, and I think that there's nothing changed. And so what it means is, here it means that I have just created a model here for album and for song. That means I've created the table for album and song, and nothing has changed. And so otherwise you'd see these changes underneath this thing here. Now, what I want to do is I want to take you to the my database where I can show you what this thing looks like. What the data, I have to close this every time. I'm going to show you that the new tables are actually there. In fact, if you go to the tables 13, are we? Here we go. Here's one. Here's my songs table. I'll see this. You can see that, for instance, all I have is like the album ID, which isn't too much. We already established. There's others. Another table here, which is the that too. looking for album right here. It's oh, it's here. It's music. We have music album here. I don't know why it's not. So you can see the there we go. Here, this is you can see not the exit. You see the this is it. Here's my table. Why can't I not see its schema here? But you can see that there's an artist ID. I have my artist, the ID, the album title, the genre, the music logo, and the other one that I have here called music song is also here, where I have file type, song type, and album. So this is all my code in there. And so oh, here we are. Sorry. There we go. So now you can see this. You can see all this. You can see that our database actually was created. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go back. Come with me, if you would, back here. And my next commands I have to type in. I'll just show you where they are. Go back to the slides. We have this migration command that we have to do, which is called manage migrate. Now, what manage migrate is going to do is actually install those tables into the whole database. So, okay, so it says nothing is happening here. So what I'm trying to say about all these things here is that each time you change your database, that means every time you go back to this, your editor file here, every time you change your file in here, your models file, anytime you make any changes here at all, then you have to go back to these two commands that you just typed in here. And those two commands will then update these tables here into your database. Or updates your database and then integrates that into your website. So those are actually quite necessary. Let's go back to the slides. Hope you're not feeling sick by me jumping around like this. I do apologize if you're feeling it. If you feel like you need to look away, then please let me know, and I can stop transitioning so quickly here. So anyway, you should be expecting to see this. And so this is really saying that there's no changes. Everything's updated. The website now knows that there's a music website or there's a music database table. And the website also knows that there's an album and a song database table. Okay, so now what we're doing is I wanted to show you this other code right here. This is actually kind of a cool little piece of code. We've been looking at our schema using this DB browser, which is I think a fairly excellent piece of code. But there's another way of looking at your code, or let's look at the schema without having to actually call up that big browser. And that is that I can just go ahead and type in this command here. You'll see this. It'll come up here. Yeah, there we are. So I can type in this command here, SQL migrate music 0001. And this is like that's like your very, very first database that you've added to this thing here. And so you're saying, show me the first database that I've added to the music app and manage it by this command here. That's what manage py calls this thing here to show you the music app database. But what I'm trying to say, though, is that this is actual code that we have done ourselves. And we have written this code in Python, which has now been converted into SQL language and then sent into an SQL database. And so this is, I mean, I'm always impressed at looking at this right here because it's just regular code for SQL that came from Python. So it's like Python has handled this whole schema writing part for us. Now, if you reflect on actually what we had to do to make this possible, we just had to write the model py file. That's all we had to do. And then Django took care of making these schema for us. Now, this is the album that we have here, and this is the song type, or this is the table. So this is music album table, and this is music song table. But again, they're exactly the same, and we have our primary keys and everything else already established. The primary keys right here. We have this auto increment, so as you add more information there, next thing you add gets the previous primary key plus 1. And I think so the keys are all automatically handled. Cool. It's just too cool. Because I'm thinking about the first. I mean, I'm thinking about the first databases that were actually established. uh, where they where they joined to websites, you had to design all this stuff yourself. You had no code that would do this for you. So this was actually something that you'd spend maybe all afternoon doing, but here it's just one command and so it's very, very cool. So now the next thing we have to do is, let me just take you back to another transition here. I'm going back to my prompt. I'm going to go ahead and start my server, run server. Okay, so everything is good to go there. I'm going back to my show you the server here. Let's reload this. If I go to groups, you can still see that nothing is down here. That means that admin doesn't know that the database for music and songs has been attached. That's what it's saying. It says, I don't know of any database. The rest of the website does know, but now we have to do like the one last link where we're saying, okay, you now have access to this database. Otherwise, the database has been established. It's part of the website. Everything is there, but the website doesn't have access to that database. And so that's what we're going to be doing now. So let's go back to our code here. Actually, let's go back to our slides. So we have some things we have to do here. We have to type in some admin. I don't know if we did this. I'm going to say about that. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and edit this file. I'm going to copy all this information here, all this code, and go to my music admin file. So I'll go back over here. I'm going to go to and my editor. So let's see, where's the admin's file? Music. There we go. This file here. So we have not edited. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste this in there. It's going to be a mess. I'm going to spend some time here kind of undoing this. I'm looking at the slides to kind of get an idea about where the pieces should come together. Let's think first. Maybe a spacer. I have this. I can probably remove this. All right, so I have this. I'm thinking that this code should work. Now, when I run this thing, this is going to now go into, that's where I found everything here. When I run this, this is going to go ahead and run my album in my music. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. I'm gonna quit this, and I have to go back in here and run. I have so many windows open on my machine here. I can't click on things in time. My fingers just don't move fast enough. Okay, so everything seemed to go okay. Nothing problems. No problems here. Come with me back to the actual site. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to reload my admin thing here. But one thing you'll notice though is that, for instance, not groups. Oh, here we are. It's down here. So it doesn't show up in groups. It shows up down here. Groups is something else. It shows up. But really, though, we have this albums area. Now, while this is interesting here, we don't really have. There's no data that we can actually click on. That means that when I'm clicking on albums, nothing is actually happening. Of course, I can click on the add button, and then I actually can manually add albums if I wanted to. But I'm not going to do that right now because I have another, let's just put another table in there. And then I'll show you some code where you can kind of automate adding things. But if I wanted to, I could add things in, this is what they call a manual system here. You can manually add things, but that would take you some time. So I'm going to go and just go back to my, here. Go back to my terminal. I'm going to stop this. See that my clicking around on here when I hit cancel, I can see that an exception had to be handled here. That's funny, actually. I didn't realize this was happening here. But when you hit cancel, really you have a failure that you have to catch, and this is your exception. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my slides. Come with me now, and where are they? Okay, so we've added the album, the album for the table here. But we have another table that we created, which was this thing called song. So I'm just going to add this one admin.site.register song to the end of my file there. So let's see, go back to the editor, come with me. Go ahead and put this right here. Hit save. Now I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to run this thing, and you'll see what it looks like when I run. I'm going to go back to my back to all this stuff. I do apologize for jumping around like this. You're probably thinking this is a little bit easy here. Let's see here. I see there's an error message that came up on song is not defined. I wonder if I did something wrong. Song. Oh, you know what? Let me show you what I'm looking at. Song didn't come up. Let's go back to the slides and see what I missed. So the song is, we have to do some other stuff. Oh, I know what it is. It's this line here. There's this line here from models import. So what I have to do is I should say, this is saying go to the models file. And in the models file, we have the album class. And then we also have the song class. And so I didn't put that song class. Let me just go ahead and fix that. Come with me now to the editor and show you the comma here, and I'll type in song. Then that should do it. Now if I go back to my terminal, and I'll just stop this and rerun it. Sometimes you have to stop it. But it seems like everything worked fine. There's no error messages down here. Let's go check out the actual slides and see what they go back to the slide itself and see what happened. I'm going to reload, and here we go. I have music. I have my album, and I have my songs. And in my songs, if I click on the add button, I can actually create a new album. I can do a file type and song title. And so that's all very cool. But I'm going to move on now. And I think in the last 9 minutes that we have here, I would like to just add some of these files using code rather than typing things here. I'm not going to add everything by. So let's go back. I'm going to go back to my system here. I have to stop it. I have to stop the system, and then let's go back to the slides where I'll show you the code that we'll use. And so the actual code that we're going to use is we're going to use the shell. The manage actually comes with its own shell interface. And what this means now is that we can actually use code like what we're doing for our lab. That kind of code we can put into we can use to create we can add data to our Django project. So let me just show you something about what that code looks like. We have to first of all establish a Python shell. And so we're going to need this code here. You always have to type in this from music models import. Now, if this were a piece of code that is actually being run in some kind of if I'm running this in code, then I would have to have all this code included in my source code, in my Python file that I'm using. But instead, what I'm doing is I'm just going to go ahead and, oops. I'm just going to go ahead and just type this in manually here so you have an idea about what to expect. So I type in manage, Python manage shell. And so when I get inside this place that looks a lot like Python, except it says interactive console, I think that's different. So the first thing I have to type in is this line here, from music.models import album song. I do apologize if I'm flying through some of this stuff here. I don't want you to feel as if I'm going to leave you behind. If you have questions, you can ask, of course. But also, though, I'm making a video of this file of this class here, so you can always go back and watch the video. You can catch pieces that you may have missed. Otherwise, everything that I'm going over is exactly in the slides. It's something different here. But as always, if you have questions, please do let me know. Okay, so now the first thing I'm going to type in is this album objects all. Now this command I just typed in, this is saying look at the albums table here and tell me what's inside the table. And this is saying that there's nothing inside the table. We already know this because we haven't added anything inside our table. So that takes us to the next part of our thing here, where we're going to be actually adding information. So I'm going to add a band here. I have this code here. I'll just go ahead and put this code in. Put this into my editor so that I can get to it without having to worry here. Edit it here. I'm going to go to my editor. I'll create a new file, and I'm just going to dump all this stuff in here, and then I'm going to. It'll make it much easier for me to go ahead and copy these things line by line. So first of all, I have this. You can see where I'm working now. I'm going to make my album song. I have this other stuff that comes along with it. This all comes together. I'll explain all this in a second. See if I get all this stuff in my same lines. Break here. Line break. Okay, so I think that should be good to go. Right. So the first thing we typed in here was this over here. So we're saying to Python, go ahead and connect with the database. We're speaking now to this models file, or the database which was created by the models file in the music project. And in particular, we're talking to these two tables here, album and song. Now, this information here that I have, this code that I'm actually working with now, is code which works for, oops. This is actually code that works for the albums table. Okay, hopefully you can see this a bit better here. So I have these pieces of information here. So this is first of all, the artist, that's our first attribute. I'm going to say the artist is now going to get this value here, the Nelsonians. The next attribute we have is called album title. It gets this title right here, which is called Bluish Blue. That's their album title. Next, we have the genre, which is going to be called, it gets this string here, rock, and so on and so forth. And this over here, this should be a, what is this here? I just show you what this thing is. It's going to be a link to some piece of music here, or link to an album song. Actually, it isn't an album song. In this case, I think, where's my link to my, here? In what I think this is here, this is this is the Allegheny College logo. So we're going to use that as our album cover logo. It's kind of, why not? Why not? Why not? Cool. Okay, now let's go back to the terminal and start adding some of the stuff here. So now don't forget what we're doing here is I have my editor is open here. So I have this, the first thing you'll see the add here is, if I can find my terminal, that would be neat. I've already added this line here. Of course, I've added it there. But the next thing I'm going to do, going back to my slides, is I have to create this artist. It looks like a copy. This whole thing's one down screen. There we go. So I've just created this. This album entry here, where I have the artist. You can see the Nelsonians, the album title, the Bluish Blue, the genre, and the logo. Now, what I need to do now is you'll see that this is just floating around. In fact, if I take you back to, before I do anything, let me take you to the slides again, and I'll show you the website. Load this. Oops. Oh, actually, I won't do that right now because then I have to change everything. But what I'm trying to say is that the settings actually haven't been made. And so before you can actually do anything here, you have to actually commit those settings, and that's by typing a.save. And then once you type that in, then you'll find that your settings have been saved. I think going back to the slides here, is that everything we're going to be adding here? Oh yes, this is one thing here called a.id. So let's look at the ID of this particular record that we just added here. So if I type in a.id, it says that this is ID 1. It means that nothing really has changed. it's the first piece. But one thing I wanted to show you though is if I go ahead and copy this albums.objects_all, this says show me what's in there. Now the way this is set up right now is that it still doesn't show everything that's in there. We still have to add some other code, but it says that there is something in there. The album now has one object. That's how that works. I'm kind of running out of time here, aren't I? And so I'm gonna I think I'll just leave it at that. If you wanted to, you could add another Beatles album if you want. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some other code into my model's music. Just one last thing, so that you can actually kind of like see what it is that we're adding here without any kind of craziness. In fact, let me just show you what it looks like before. I'm going to get out of this, go back to manage, too many words at the end of the M here, run server, and then when I go back to my slides here, let me get this into work. Go. So there we are. So when I go to my album, you can see that there's one object that's in there, and I see my Nelsonians, bluish blue, rock, everything that I just added is all here. Now, one thing I would like to do though is that I want to be able to see kind of like what the rather than having this word objects down here, I want to see what the stuff is without me having to actually click on this object. When I click on the object, then everything is filled out here. I'm going to make it so it's more reader friendly. And so how do I do that? Well, I need to go ahead and stop my server. Done right now. And I need to go to my editor, which is going to be down here. I go here, and I go here. Let's see my slides up there again. And I'm going to have to type in this code that I just pulled that was right here. I'm going to place that into my models.py file. So let's see, how do I get to models.py? There's this file here. Can you all see that? Again. This file is going to be going into. It works. It works. I think you can just put it right here at the end. Oh, of course. Goodness gracious. Let me go ahead and just organize some stuff here. So I need to do some, I need to move that there. Let's see, show the, return the album title here. What? Here, I need to. Then next, what else am I doing here? I'm actually looking at my slides here. Oh, it is. I can't quite see. Let me switch. Yeah, so the first one was the comment here. Let me just put this on the same screen so I can kind of get. That was actual code. Okay, so that we have some. This is that was commented out. Thank you, Alexander. And then I can put this. Where's the other return? Right here. Go. Is that right? Is this going to work? Sorry. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Indentation is very important here. So the I think that this def is going to be indented here. In fact, I'll just go ahead and just indent everything. Back again. Self-taught artist. How do you mean? Yeah. So I think that I'm sorry. I'm just getting myself confused here. This should all be at the same. You should all be able to see this on the same. It should be on the same line here. I think this is okay. Typically, I wouldn't be so confused on this one. I'm just trying to figure out like what is going on here. I think I can move that back. Maybe this doesn't have to be so far forward. That'll do it. I think this indentation is working. Here. I know we're running out of time here. We're 2 minutes over. I do apologize. Let me just go back to just show you this one thing, and if it works, then it's like we can end and go to the weekend, and it'll be great. I'm going to go back to my terminal and run this thing, and hopefully it comes together. There we go. So now I'll take you to the actual slides, and you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and reload that, and there we go. So you have now added the functionality of adding this your object now is having this given the title. Now I've added these crazy looking pluses, dash dash plus. I've added that. You probably wouldn't use that to actually show your music, but I've made that crazy character there just expressly so that you can see that that is something you can change in your file. So for instance, if you go back to your editor, you can see, for instance, like right here, that's where all this stuff is coming from. Just this piece of code here. And so you might have to change that depending on how you're going to be formatting your data as the user sees. I think that really that's more or less everything that we need to talk about. Slides are more or less done here. In fact, that is our last slide. So I think that when we come back on Monday, we're going to just kind of like drive home all these points, put everything back together, and then we'll be done with Django. And I think that then we'll, after that, on Wednesday, we'll move into the MongoDB, which I think you'll find is actually a very exciting database. And by the way, just one more thing before we end. I know that we're 4 minutes over, but please don't forget to start adding like SQL and Django and Python and those kinds of things to your resumes. These are skills that you have now. And so add them to your resumes and anything else you've learned in any other class. But add those skills down because I'm thinking next semester, some of you may be looking for jobs and opportunities for the summer. You may as well put these skills down. I mean, you worked hard enough for them, so may as well put them in there and make sure that everyone knows that you have them.